Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am William talking. Today I have an extra special treat for you. You see, I have always dreamed of, shall we say, proving my passions in the arena of challenge. I know, it sounds silly. Long story short, I attempted a Dark Souls challenge run. I am to get to the boss Knight Artorias with exclusively fist weapons in fights that I actually have access to fist weapons. You may see a couple of incongruencies here and there. That is due to my Xbox being a little bit difficult when it comes to recording. I apologize that I cannot show full clips, but you're getting a compilation of the kills. Any additional commentary will be added for said specific battles. I hope you enjoy. Have a good day. There really isn't much to say about the first boss, the Asylum Demon. In almost any challenge run, you're going to cheese them. So I'm going to go into sort of a general build idea here. I started with the Pyromancy because, well, firstly it allows you to essentially skip Asylum Demon without actually pulling off complicated skip animation, and more importantly it starts you at Soul Level 1, meaning you get the most level ups for the least cost, but you also technically start with the worst stats. Might not have been the best move. Also, for frame of reference, I got the Master Key as my gift, so I could easily perform more skips, as you will see later in this run. Now, we can see here that I'm fighting the Chaos Witch Quelaag surprisingly early. A few of you may also notice that I have employed Maneater Mildred to essentially whittle down the boss, and admittedly, do most of the damage for me. This is because at this point in the game, it is extraordinarily hard to do any effective damage to any of these bosses, as the Cestus weapon starts with jack-all damage. If you feel this forfeits the run, I am inclined to agree. Honestly, I believe the rest of the run's difficulty is enough to cover that, but that's okay. You're welcome to your opinion, I'm welcome to mine. One thing I do want to mention is throwing the fireball towards the end of the clip to draw aggro, so that Maneater Mildred doesn't get immediately destroyed by Quelaag. It's an old trick I learned somewhere, but I can't praise myself too much. There really isn't much for me to say during this clip. I'm doing the famous Ceaseless Discharge skip, wherein you wait for the boss Ceaseless Discharge to leap at you at a specific point in the arena's geography, punch him between 4 and 5 times, and he immediately incurs a massive amount of fall damage as the game detects he is simply not supposed to be on that area. It's very simple, and essentially skips the fight without actually skipping it. I mean, free bonus XP, am I right? Here we can see the boss I was likely supposed to fight before Quelaag, that being the Tauros Demon. Fun fact, this guy gave me a lot of trouble during my first ever run of the game. I couldn't tell you why, but this has always been a cheap boss and very easy to handle, so there's really nothing to say here. At this point, I must confess I've made a little bit of a mistake. During my continued summonings, I failed to realize that Dark Souls 1 does not exactly have the same boss HP scaling mechanic that some of the later games in the franchise and genre do. So, in short, if an NPC does massive damage, the boss is essentially going to be destroyed without you ever lifting a finger. I have to apologize for allowing myself to do this. Now, at this point, against a boss that is typically hard for most builds, I realized my playstyle. I was going to sort of YOLO my way through the game, just wildly swinging and not really worrying about dodging, hopefully tanking damage. Essentially, it was the smartest strategy when I have next to no range. I could spit on the enemy and likely hit them from further away. The clip really just sort of speaks for itself here. Even at the lowest level, Dark Souls 1 buffs are frankly insane. I love these things. The damage is always really satisfying, especially just watching it play out the way it does. To be totally clear on this boss, I also summoned after my first attempt, where I attempted to do it solo. This boss has a tremendously high amount of HP, and as you can see in the clip, I was doing very little damage, even with my buffs. So, this is another disqualifier, but I truly don't mind. This is more about the journey than the specific bosses, with exception of one. Okay, so very long story short here, I summoned the Black Iron Knight Tarkus, and as the boss did its final slam attack on me, the boss died. Now this is interesting because the Iron Golem specifically has an issue where they will respawn after dying if you also died at the same time. It appears that I simply had it die on the frame just before that cutoff, or within a few frames. So that's rather interesting. I apologize that I couldn't show you the fight. I do recall the damage was abysmal, though, so you're not missing much. Okay, so this boss requires a lot of explaining. I used the soul of the Iron Golem to transpose into the Dragonbone Fists, and got the Great Chaos Fireball Pyromancy, as well as, I believe, Power Within, though that may have come later. I had to do a lot of soul grinding for this, like a lot. The main reason I have that Pyromancy equipped is to grind out the lesser enemies around the statue at the beginning of the Painted World of Ariamis. To put a very long story short, I have put at least 12 of the 32 hours this run came to at the end into a mixture of grinding and travel. Very little of it was actually just fighting, as you can probably see. This is sadly yet another boss where I sort of ran around and did a lot of stuff in the background before actually fighting them. So my original plan was to grind out the Dark Moon Blade Miracle, which required 30 faith, and to max it out, 80 Souvenirs of Reprisal, which is an item only dropped by a singular respawning enemy in the entire game, who was frankly giving me a lot of trouble, and they only drop a maximum of about 30% of the time, and I'll be real with you, audience, this was so daunting I actually kind of broke down crying after I realized how difficult it was. So I decided to settle for second best and get Sunlight Blade, the Lightning Armament Miracle. Bit of a spoiler alert, I do not regret this decision. I regret fighting Gwyndolin, but I do not regret that decision. Ah yes, the infamous gatekeepers of the second half. These bastards gave me some trouble. Oddly, the area before their arena, more than the bosses themselves. I keep calling them bosses as if there's more than one, it's kind of strange, but I decided to fight Ornstein because his attacks would be simpler. In this majestic clip, you can see the wild Super Ornstein perform a technique known as Dragon Punch into Grab Stab, also known as the Lightning Totsugeki. I'm quite proud I accidentally pulled this off, but I still take credit for it. I will be absolutely honest, I only fought this boss for the bonus souls and the Titanite slab to max out my Cestus to plus 15 later in the game. So instead of actually talking about it, I'll talk about the Xbox 360 version, which had an AoE that, to at least my personal visible eye spectrum, was completely invisible. So it would just kill me with a wet fart of a shockwave that I never saw. Congratulations to Dark Souls Remastered for making more attacks readable, especially the more transparent AoEs. Legitimately, a good change. So, as is plainly demonstrated during this boss fight against Sif, the Great Grey Wolf, best of good girls, well, I kinda learned the power of my Miracle Lightning Fist, and as much as I don't want to admit it, I was laughing pretty hard once I started hitting this boss and realized it only took about 9 hits to permanently put it in the dirt. Call me a bad person all you want. This was very cathartic. Evidently, there's really not much for me to say about the Demon Fire Sage. It is, to my opinion at least, easier than both of its prior incarnations or copies. The only thing of note, for me at least, is the build functionality I've achieved, where I use Power Within, a flat 40% buff to stamina regeneration and damage, combined with my weapon buff, the lightning weapon, Sunlight Blade, to essentially massively buff my weapon and then increase my overall damage, including the damage of the buff, even further. Basically, buff combos in Dark Souls 1 are a little bit insane, because they all stack with each other. So, I'm applying the buff, then my own damage gets a 40% boost, and then the buff gets another 40% boost. It's kind of scary how it all stacks. This boss is completely boring. Genuinely, I have nothing to say about it. It is just a waste of time. It is, even in lore, only in the game, because some asshole dropped something. Well, kablooey patootie, I punched him to death. Congratulations, I did a little bit of a bug fix. Honk honk. This boss was an absolute nightmare to fight. It, as you can obviously see here, timed out both of my buffs, which I actually applied separately. And just generally, this thing gave me a really hard time. I spent several hours trying to fight this thing. Now, we're gonna move on to something a little bit special. A bit of an intermission, if you will. At this point in the run, I had to ask myself a few difficult questions. My build was mostly complete, and my main target was Knight Artorias. With every obstacle in my way to him thoroughly defeated, I really had to think to myself, do I want to try and fight the 4 mandatory bosses before Gwyn, before fighting Artorias, and fight him at my absolute best, or try to take him on now and see what happens? Eventually, I came to a bit of an interesting decision. Keep in mind, one of the major decisions I had to make was if I was even going to fight Gwyn, because the person who posed me this challenge told me directly that I could just beat Artorias, drop the save, and never play it again. I decided to take a different route, one that takes a little bit more effort. And before anyone asks, we are not doing Manus, we are not doing Calamite, I am not fighting those bosses with my fists. I tried. Good lord, I tried. They are not worth that level of struggle. I do not respect them that much. Well, okay, this is not the abyss I was expecting to find myself in today. This boss was very stressful. I actually had to grind a fair amount before I had the DPS required to pass this infamous test. Other than that, the only real problem was the run-up, and running out of buffs because of how long it takes for them to spawn when you actually kill them quickly. The damage wasn't even that much of a problem. Not a bad fight, 4 out of 10. I'm not even gonna try and hide it. I genuinely dislike this boss, and its area, and pretty much every mechanic on it. To sum it up easily, roses are red, violets are blue, ads in bosses are bullshit, and so are you. I hate the bed of chaos, 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 I hate the bed of chaos. I hate the bed of chaos, 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 I hate the bed of chaos. Seath the Scaleless is admittedly kind of a joke. This is not a very difficult fight. The area and run-up towards him is frustrating beyond compare, but the boss himself is actually a little bit mediocre. It's pretty easy to outmaneuver him and just punch him until he's dead. I don't really have anything else to say. I even had time to equip my Silver Serpent Ring during the fight. I wasn't even looking at him. GG easy. So here we are. This is the final boss of Dark Souls 1, and kind of the least interesting, at least in terms of final bosses in the series. During development, they decided to give this boss a parryable attack. This is the literal worst mistake they could have made. They gave a massive payoff bonus for a relatively easy to read and easy to counter attack move. This is kind of embarrassing. One thing I will admit, though, is this boss does attack fast enough that I was not able to apply both of my buffs simultaneously with any measure of regularity. His insane speed and damage basically made that impossible. So he's got that going for him, but really, this fight was nothing special. This is an old man afraid of the dark that I parry-riposted to death. Hell, I even finished him off with the iconic Shoryuken just to style on the old man a little bit more. Take notes, Zoomers, this is how you flex on them boomers. Now let's see what a real final boss can do. I have a few things I would like to say before I let this fight play out. I was far from my absolute peak in terms of build strength. There was still quite a bit for me to go. Notably, the Cestus has a higher DPS than the Dragonbone Fist when maxed out with 40 in both strength and dexterity. Frankly, that would have pushed me far into level 110 to 20 territory, which would have taken hours of grinding. So I decided to do what else but YOLO it, try my best with what I had, and I honestly think this fight, even though it's pretty sloppy on my end, was successful. This, to me, is the true final boss of this run, my favorite fight in the game, arguably the series, inspired by one of my favorite fictional characters, being one of my favorite fictional characters, and inspiring a few fictional characters that I personally have made. This is kinda special for me. I'm doing this run to commemorate a tattoo I plan on getting. Once this whole thing is finished, I'll even upload a picture to my channel at some point. This fight was wonderful. It never gets old. I love this bloody battle so much. I'm gushing like an idiot. The reason I call this the true final boss for me is, once again, I was told I could beat Artorias and just drop it. I didn't have to fight Gwyn, the Bed of Chaos, Seath, Nito, the Four Kings, none of them. I decided to anyway to sort of round out the run and get that sweet 90 gamer points. But all in all, this was where it really ended for me. And I'm happy that we got to this point. Thank you all for watching.